What up, YouTube? This is your boy, the Visionary. Welcome to another episode of Fireside Chats. Yeah, I've been going for a while. I haven't been putting up videos lately. Actually, I have been putting up videos, but these videos were done months ago. As part of my two-part series. Basically the OWS, the evolution of the OWS movement, because I've been following since almost from the beginning, and I wanted to chronicle its evolution, the beginning of the movement, and then the end of it to see what the outcome was. So the first series is going to be 2-minute interviews with people who are there at some of the protests, in particular 14th Street and Union Square and other places, who gave their 2 cents about what's going on. And that was months ago. And then the second part of the series is going to be about the aftermath of the evolution of the OWS movement, and seeing what has come about, what changes have been made, so on and so forth, yada yada. So keep your eyes out for that. Now this video is basically going to be about the subtext is society and history, and the title is Political Disenfranchisement and New Age Paradigm Shifts. If you've been paying attention for the last year, a little bit more than a year and a half, you've been noticing that the current illusion of the American image has been shifting from that of what you know versus the reality of what we do and what we say. In particular, to be blunt, there is a subtle, well, actually not subtle, there's a direct undercurrent of corruption within our government, in which we have basically painted over with disillusion, clever marketing strategy in terms of the American government being a corporation, so on and so forth. And it's just blatantly in your face. Like, you have the Department of Justice, the Fast and Furious thing. Then you have where they sold a shitload of guns to Mexican criminals who were in Arizona, hoping to track those guns to the Mexican crime cartels and then arrest them and so forth. Then you have the money laundering that some of our banks have been getting into with the drug cartels and criminals and so on and so forth. Then you have certain things that are not technically crimes. Well, they are crimes, but it depends on what your geopolitical standpoint is on certain countries. And for instance, Iran. There have been some new stories that came out where HSBC and I believe Bank of America, I'm not too sure, they have been money laundering for Iran. And as most people know, the United States and NATO in generally have put economic sanctions on the country to prevent it from enriching uranium and so on and so forth, and terrorist connections and all this other BS. Then you have the certain things like when you look into Congress and Senate and just government in general, you'll notice that there are certain things that they can do that normal people can't do, which under normal circumstances, a normal person doing it would be completely legal. Like, for instance, I think Congress and Senate can legally have inside information and use that to invest in the stock market and do things and to sell stocks short and shit like that. Now, a normal person, that's illegal for a normal person to do, because if enough people do that, you can sell short the entire stock market and crash the shit. But politicians and people who are in part of the Congress and Senate are allowed to do this because just because of their placement in government, in terms of some of them actually own shares in certain companies. Some of them are actually the president and COO of their own companies who have invested stock in the stock market, and they are privy to certain information, first-hand information, before anyone gets it. Like literally days, weeks, even months beforehand. So they make investments based on that information, and if any normal citizen does that, even and they can be in that industry, they can get fined and sent to jail. It's a felony offense. But if you're in part of Congress and Senate, it's all good game. And part of that raises questions about ethics, because in general that brings up what is it? I forgot the actual legal term. I think the term is a conflict of interest, basically, because if something's going to happen ahead of time, for instance, the housing market, and that was actually a big thing. The housing market where, what is this guy's name? Bernanke, and I forgot the other dude. He's like the head of the, he was basically, actually no, the healthcare situation, because that, once Obama put his plan into action, there was such a big upheaval that most people don't understand in terms of the stock market, that, you know, a lot of people got rich off of that. Like, the head of the Republican House Speaker, I forgot his name, I'm so lost on his name, but he was in a secret meeting with Bernanke and another guy who runs the Fed, and they're basically, what the Fed does, literally, is they have meetings with Congress and Senate and the President's cabinet, and they tell them, yo, this is what's going on. Now, here's the first-hand information. You know, here's A, here's B, here's C. This is what you need to do. This is what's going to happen. Yada, 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 yakky, smackety. Do what you need to do. Now, the thing is, this guy who's like the head of the whatever department, when Obama started pushing for the healthcare law, once it got kind of passed and they started rearranging certain things, he got in and he was like, yo, Bernanke was telling him, listen, when that shit gets passed, comes through, stocks are gonna drop at first. What you need to do is get in, buy, then sell short. And that's what he did. He made a fortune off of that shit. And the thing is, normal people are not allowed to do that. And because of what he did and what other people did on that, healthcare is actually going to be a bit more expensive than what it's supposed to be, because of the fact that people jumped in at the right time, bought off enough shares, and they created a sort of a landslide effect on the cost of what it's going to be for healthcare in general. So there's just that, and then there's if you go into, that's just basic politics, economics. That was economics. Then you get into war and foreign policy, and then you have basically our 10+ year war in Iraq, Afghanistan, and then the military excursions that we had in Libya, our military posturing against Iran, our involvement in Syria, in particular Kofi Annan with the UN and NATO, and his shuttling back and forth between Syria and NATO, trying to get the Assad regime. And I want to stress the fact that when they say regime, that it means bad. But the thing is, before any of this happened, you never heard of Assad. You never heard that shit was happening in Syria. You never heard shit was happening in Iran, except for the usual whatever the fuck his name is, Ahmadinejad, whatever his shit, his whatever he spouts off normally during political discourse in the international community, it's never anything really big, you know what I mean? But if you've been noticing the little military excursions that we've been doing, as far as Libya is concerned, as far as the Syria regime, as far as our use of NATO forces to, you know, go into these places and get shit done, you know, it remains to be seen what the fuck are we doing in these countries. Like, we have but the way we present it, we're trying to say that we're doing a humanitarian service by going into these countries, but we're really not. It's bullshit. Because if you actually look into the past, you have Sierra Leone, you have the Congo, you have all these African nation states in Africa and other places where genocide occurred and we did nothing. In fact, Saddam Hussein with the Kurds and all the other people, situation that he had, we never interfered. But as soon as there was an economic agenda, which there was, and most people don't understand, there was an economic agenda to go into Iraq and Afghanistan, we went in, period. And, you know, most people think, oh, you know, he has weapons of mass destruction. Number one, the administration has currently, as of lately, said, listen, we were mistaken. There weren't any weapons of mass destruction. We were misled by the intelligence information we were given by the CIA and other intelligence agency, blah, 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 blah. And then on their side, there weren't any weapons of mass destruction. You can go there yourself if you want to, and there's nothing there, period. There's nothing but dead bodies and destruction and so on and so forth. So we fought in legal war on the false pretenses. Hundreds of thousands of people have died. Then we fought another war in another part of a fucking country. Then when Libya starts popping off, and I want people to check, because I'm going to do a separate video on this, I want people to check the pattern. You're going to start seeing this lately. You're going to see another Middle Eastern country, a supposed dictator starts popping off. Supposed dictator pops off, and there are rebels in that country, and then all of a sudden, the U.S., the NATO, who is nothing more than a proxy for the U.S., goes in, disposes of the tyrant from the regime, and installs a new leader, so on and so forth. And I feel that's going to be happening consistently over the next couple of years, and I'm going to do a separate video on that, explain that later. Now, the second part of this video, it's based around the idea that as these things are happening, there's a sort of idea floating around. More or less, it's not new. It's just a new paradigm shift that people believe is happening. They feel that, we are shifting into a new paradigm in which, government needs to be shrinked. Society is becoming corrupt in general, not just government, but society is becoming corrupt. And we need to shift away from what society is now to what it was back in the day before the Industrial Revolution is concerned, yada yada. And I call these the New Age paradigm shift. These are the hippies, the New Agers, the ones that believe in the Illuminati, the occult, and all this other stuff. And I look at this in terms of seeing what the importance is in this New Age paradigm shift in regards to how useful is it to help you deal with I just dropped my thing. How helpful is it to help you deal with the coming shift? Because I do believe there is a shift in how things are currently turning out to be. Because in my past videos I put up, they talked about all the new laws that have been passed ever since Obama came into office. And beginning with President Bush, because of, if you know, the Patriot Acts, and there are other acts that were passed during his time. And then once Obama got into office, a whole bunch of shit that pretty much ripped up and destroyed the Constitution have been put up. And I want people to really think about that, because that's what the New Age paradigm shift is originating from. The fact that our currently held beliefs about the Constitution and the value of the Constitution and our legal right as citizens and all the laws and rights that we have now been assaulted or attacked, based on these new laws that have been passed. So the new paradigm shift is made to address that situation in terms of, it's not just going back to the old ways in terms of let's be deindustrialized, let's go back to the old school parent nucleus family, so on and so forth, and the old school ways of farming and all that shit. It's just the paradigm is basically made to address the need and want to go back to a simpler time before these wars started popping off and so on and so forth. So that's it. Thank you for watching the video. Stay tuned to my next one. It's going to be preludes. I'm going to expound more on that whole the pattern on foreign policy. That's it. Last thing I want to leave off with, a new book that I've been reading about, because I'm currently getting into geopolitics and geostrategy. It's like my new favorite subject. I talk about it all the time with a lot of my friends who are not into it, but whatever, I don't give a shit. This book is called America and the World, and the author really doesn't matter, but one of the guys that's on it is a guy called Zbigniew Brzezinski. This dude is a very important player in the geopolitical stage. Like, he is I would say, the puppet master in regards to directing foreign policy for the United States. And he has been doing this for the last, I would say, 30 years. Yeah, pretty much 30 years. He was the Secretary of State, during Jimmy Carter's, whatever, and then once Jimmy Carter finished his presidency, he was one of the people that stayed on as an advisor to future presidents. He helped create the Trilateral Commission in the Council on Foreign Relations, which he's both chairman on. Yeah, very important dude, and he has like a dozen books. Like, there's this one, and this is basically him talking with the George Bush's Secretary of State. This guy, Brent Scowcroft, was George Bush's Secretary of State during September 11th and onward, and after he left. But this book is basically a conversations between the two and a mediator, a writer. He's not really important, but if you want the name, David Ignatius, whatever. But he was basically a writer for the New York Post, and he followed the Bush presidency in September 11th and all the after effects of what happened. But this guy, very important. I'm going to be doing a video series talking about the big name players in the geopolitical stage, and more importantly, this guy's concept of geostrategy, because he's the creator of it in terms of understanding foreign policy and basically a softer form of imperialism. That's basically what it is. Alright then, that's it. Take care. Deuces.